Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show tonight. Well, we are going to be looking at ancient mysteries, both East and West. Yeah, I guess that would be the case. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Andy McFareast about ancient mysteries from exotic lands. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking to a Texas original, Josh Reeves, about the lost secrets of ancient America. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, clairvoyant readings, and energy healing. And so do check out soulhealer.com. If you've missed an episode of Just Energy Radio, please do stop by the Just Energy Radio webpage. That's www.justenergyradio.com, and listen to the archive, and while you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter that'll keep you informed of who's coming on Just Energy Radio. And I periodically do send out articles and other information, my articles and information, to keep you informed of, what's going on. But you can also check out the episodes of Just Energy Radio on YouTube on the Just Energy Radio YouTube channel. And when you're there, do subscribe to the channel. We would really appreciate it. Or you can keep informed of what's going on by liking Just Energy Radio on Facebook. But don't forget, you can always come here to the Inception Radio Network and listen to the show live and participate in the chat room, as well as listen to the archive shows here on the Inception Radio Network, as well as download their smartphone app, and you can listen like while you're at work or in your car, and you can listen to my show or the other great program that they have here on Inception. Okay, so just a couple of little announcements, and these are a little bit far out, but I thought I'd throw them out there anyway. So on September 21st, I will be speaking at the Paranormal Times Expo. Well, actually, it's, if I read my own writing correctly, Paranormal Times Paracon. And that's going to be held, I want to say Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but it's not. They told me, they just invite me to stuff. And it's like, sure, I'll come. And then someone told me it was like an hour drive from Oklahoma City. So in Oklahoma, somewhere, in the haunted part of Oklahoma. And then also a good friend of mine is putting on a conference in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it's the Ancient Mysteries Conference. And that's being held September 29th in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that is going to be a great event. So check that out as well. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Andy and get him on the air. Andy McFareast is an Australian-based author who was born in Indonesia, where he spent his childhood and early adulthood. He has an eclectic background ranging from biblical scholar to working in finance and legal sectors. He speaks fluent English, Indonesian, some Chinese, and a few other Indonesian dialects. nowadays he's comfortable with non-categorized spiritual knowledge, which I wonder what that is, and practice with no affiliation to any particular organized religion. So the author of the book, The Exotic Files, is Andy McFareast. Hey, Andy, how are you?
I'm very well, Dr. Rita. It is nice to be on your show, and thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You had contacted me and you kind of got me a little intrigued. And I'm like, okay, yeah, send me your book because I think you might be a really good fit for the show. And I'm just so glad that it all worked out and you're here and we're hanging out. But I have to ask you, non-categorized spiritual knowledge, what does that mean? It sounds really good.
Well, if you read my background probably in my book, you will understand that because I came from a very, very strict Christian background. I would say it's like a typical Baptist evangelical fundamentalist Christianity. So nowadays, because I venture into so many different spirituality, and I've learned a lot of religions and old religions so far. And I think myself, I don't want to put into those boxes anymore. I am just what I am. I'm just a spiritual being, and I just do whatever I feel my spiritual needs will do. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
I just love the way that you phrase that. I might have to steal it. I'm not sure. I like that.
That's very nice of you.
Okay. So you live in Australia, but you grew up obviously in Indonesia. What got you interested in exploring spirituality, mythology, and folklore?
Well, this is another interesting story probably about my background because I was trained to be a Christian pastor in the past, and I've learned the Bible from cover to cover, and I've read it 3 times from cover to cover, and I left that career and moved to Australia in the 1990s. And after that, from that very right brain experience or very right brain type of work, move into the very left brain type of work, which is accounting and also working in some legal works as well, a little bit of that. And but during that time, I also venture into science, which is something that I've always liked. And I also doing my own research in the other realms of spirituality, but I didn't really find it at that time. And I almost turned into atheism, actually. But something happened a few years ago, and it puts me back into something different this time. It's like going back into the circle, but something different this time. It's not the same like before, and that's why I thought this is not going back to the religion, although it's something going back to the right brain again. But now it is different. It is something from within, something from inside you that you realize, that you remember again. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. To me, looking at mythology and folklore and stuff, it was someone's religion at one point in time. And so, I just feel like being open to being able to receive or hear or empathize with the stories that this was their reality. It might not be our reality now. As opposed to, there are a lot of people that will just poo-poo their beliefs, and so I think that's really cool too.
Yeah, exactly. And it is quite such a synchronicity actually today that I'm on your show, because about a couple of weeks ago, I've listened to an interview by Mel Fabregas on Fabregas Radio, speaking with Frank Joseph Hoff, and he's promoting his book, not his book, Professor Arijo Santos' book, Atlantis in Indonesia, basically. And today I'm going to talk about Indonesia. So I'd like to brave myself and with humbleness, trying to say to people that probably my book, The Exotic Files, is like a small contribution or like a compliment to that book about Atlantis in Indonesia. Like, well, it's a hypothesis, but my book is like the point of view from the cultural aspects of it, like the all the myths and folklore and legends in it.
Well, and that's one of the things that I have heard. I mean, this hasn't been my experience because I haven't ever gone anywhere, but that I have heard from researchers is that they will go into an area. Like a good friend of mine, Brian Forrester, has spent some time on Easter Island studying the Moai and the cultural aspects of the Rapa Nui people. And he, what he really wanted to learn was the mythology and some of the deeper beliefs that came from antiquity. And he wasn't able to get them to open up to a level that he felt they had the knowledge. And so you being brought up in that culture, I feel like, they wouldn't be hiding the stories from you or not communicating, because these would be things I would think that you would be brought up with regular, like how, Santa Claus we were talking about earlier,
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I was brought up surrounded by these stories and these folklore and legends and myths every day, like on TV. People talk about it, and people around me have experienced, even myself have experiences about that. And I put that all in the book. And it's just so fascinating, actually. And in the past, I took it for granted. I didn't really pay attention to it. But nowadays, when I'm afar from the land that I was born, and nowadays I remember. It's like a process of remembering. When I wrote that book, remembering everything that I've experienced and I've seen, I've heard, and this is so amazing. Actually, this is quite interesting journey for me.
Great. You were mentioning the concept of Atlantis, but when I think of Indonesia, Polynesia, Atlantis doesn't come to mind. I would think more of Lemuria or Mu or those cultures that are traditionally assigned to the Pacific Ocean. And so based on your, investigation or knowledge, are there stories of some kind of a global culture, I'm not even going to tie a name to it, but a global culture that existed at some point in time in that area?
Well, that's a very good question, because I raised this issue because, by the way, I just started my own radio show as well. It's called Far Australia Radio Show. And if people go to my website, they will find it there. And soon I will release my interview with this gentleman, Frank Joseph, who is also the friend of your show, a very nice gentleman who gracefully accepted my invitation to be on my show. And I raised this question about could it be that Indonesia be the Atlantis, according to Professor Horacio Santos' book Atlantis in Indonesia. Finally found that one that Mel Fabregas just had the interview with Frank Joseph Hoff. This is the other Frank Joseph, by the way, 2 weeks ago. And Frank Joseph said to me, basically, he said, we shouldn't put the name, like what you said, Dr. Rita, we shouldn't put the name on it, because probably this is just something else. This is just, an ancient culture that has been on the earth longer, or even further back from the Atlantis that we know, probably. And the thing is, there's some very fascinating, interesting archaeological found that recently found in Indonesia. One of them I put in the book is called the pyramid in Garut. Garut is a city in West Java, and they found this structure that looks so much like a pyramid. And people call it Sadahurip Mountain, the Sadahurip Pyramid. Now, they think it's a pyramid because it looks very, very artificial. And some people said that it might even be older than the Pyramid of Giza and Göbekli Tepe. So it's even older than that they said is about 14,000 years old. And not only that, I've also got the information that not only that one they have found recently in the nearby city, but also that there are a few others. And there's another one in a town near the town called Cianjur, which is about a couple dozen miles away from that other city that I mentioned. This is another one, older one, that's also found, but it was found before, even during the Dutch occupation era. They found it. It's called Gunung Padang. It means Padang means like a savanna area, but Gunung means mountain. So it's a mountain of savanna or something in the translation, if I can translate that. And this is another old structures, which is also older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And the world's attention hasn't been much into this area, which is quite baffling for me, because this is so fascinating. I mean, people talk about Göbekli Tepe all the time recently because it's 11,000 years old, but this one is so much older. And this is so interesting because that means, like what you said, it might be not Atlantis, it might be Lemuria, it might be something else. We never know. But basically, this is the fact. This is the physical proof or the physical manifestation that we can see that something else older than what we thought it was exists in Indonesia.
Well, and one of the things that I have, heard, felt, uncovered, found evidence of is that there does seem to be a very strong connection between Indonesian, Polynesian, even China stuff and the Americas. Like there was information getting across the ocean, so whether it was a continent or, as I've heard it speculated, a series of islands that are now submerged that were traveled to, with Easter Island being, some, just very high mountain somewhere, and Hawaii, there seems to be, let me put it this way, more evidence of that kind of a culture in the Pacific, much more than I find evidence mythologically or even culturally of some kind of an island culture in the middle of the Atlantic. I mean, I think you're into something, and I can see the logic of that, and I think I agree with what you say, because we never know what the ocean what the Earth looked like in the past. We never know that because we weren't there, and all these structures and evidence that we found recently is like proving that they might be at the same land or the same continent that might have been submerged by now. So if we go into the depth of the oceans, probably we might find many other artifacts that we never knew before. So that will be interesting. And that's why I thought this book, the Exotic Files, is not just about particular culture, although of course it is from Indonesia, but it's got universal message of spirituality, of ancient cultures, and everything else that we can relate to. I mean, it's not just for particular people; it's for everybody, for anyone. And humans basically are the same everywhere in the world. I travel to many places in the world, and I can tell you that basically people are the same inside. They don't want to have wars. They don't want to have any horrible things happen to them. They all want to have peace and nice life. And this book basically is not about politics or religions, although I put some mini references into the Bible because that's my background, a little bit of that. But basically this book has a universal message and talking about how actually maybe it's all connected. Everybody in the world probably is connected. Just looking at this story alone probably will prove that this is maybe
a part of the big puzzle of the human picture. Probably just a small part of it that can contribute and will complete the picture.
I mean, I think the world is getting much smaller. But let me ask you one more question about this whole Lemuria Atlantis thing, and then we're gonna move on because I have a ton of questions for you.
Okay. Are
there any stories, mythological stories about a lost culture? I mean, that, I've been I was telling you before we went on air. I've been reading a lot of Indonesian mythology, Polynesian, Hawaiian, just that whole area, because it's interesting how all of these little, isolated island groups have their own mythology, and even sometimes multiple groups of mythology all in one island. But there's just this very similar flavor when you survey all of them. But I have not seen any stories like Atlantis of a lost culture. And I'm wondering if you have heard of any stories of some kind of ancient culture that has gone away.
Well, all I can say is, because also my background in the biblical study, we can just take that story about the Noah flood, The flood in the Bible actually is taken from the even older stories that has been around in the world at that time. And the story about the flood is everywhere. And not only that, the story about the giants is everywhere, all around the world. And then we can find some artifacts and some connection between this temple, the ancient temple in this land, compared to the other temple in the other land. This is like what my other guest, Richard Casaro, in my radio show talking about. He connected the Balinese culture and the Mayan culture in terms of the temple structures and the carvings, etc., etc. And that's just a proof that probably that there was a lost civilization, there's a lost culture that has been on the earth, all around the earth, that makes into one culture at that time, or maybe at least they interacted with each other if there were two or more of them. And that's just what we can see probably in Indonesia alone. The stories about giants and the flood and mythological creatures and phenomena, also the proof that probably it's connected to the other cultures in America and Europe and Africa, because they're similar in a way, although probably it's been adapted into the local culture. But if we look back and just do some investigation, the essence is the same. It's just probably our human psychology sometimes when we look at, oh, this is strange, I never heard about this one, oh, this land is strange, they have different language with mine, and this is just a human psychology, the fear of the unknown, different race or different cultures or different languages. It makes us fear about, oh, this is maybe different. No, actually, I'd like to say that it's all connected in the end. It's all connected, and probably that's the key. That's the red line. That's the thread, the silver lining, if I can say. Yeah.
Okay, so you started to bring up the giants. So in your culture, or in Indonesia, do they tie the giants, and I like to think the demise of the giants, with the flood? I mean, because, in the Bible, we have the Nephilim tied to the flood.
Yeah.
But in Indonesia, I mean, I haven't seen that, but, that's kind of my belief that they were pretty much eliminated, in the bigger picture of things with the flood. So what do you think?
Well, I haven't come across to the story that directly linking the giants with the flood in Indonesia, but definitely there's so many stories about giants in Indonesia. It's like children stories, really, but that's why I didn't really put much in the book. But the giants in Indonesia actually not only stories, because there's a speculation that they have found this fossil of giant. It's called Megapithrombus in Java, and I think it's in the Solo Museum in Central Java. So if you search that or Google that on the internet, you might find it. And so maybe there's some kind of grain of truth in the stories about giants, including in Indonesia. Although I haven't come across to that direct link like you have found.
In Indonesia, I mean, I've read a lot of giant stories, and in some cultures, they're nice giants, and in other cultures, not so nice giants. So in Indonesia, do you have nice giants? Do you have not so nice giants? Or do you have a combination of the two?
Yeah, we have both. We have both of them. Like one of them is called Buto Ijo, meaning a green giant. This giant is like 10 meters tall. Like, I don't know how many feet is that. Probably 30 feet.
Really big.
30 feet tall. Yeah, very big. We're really scary face and big fangs and big eyes and green skin. And the strange thing is, about a couple of years ago, someone posted a video about this monster, this giant, showing this monster crossing a bridge in West Java, and they show it on TV. Although there's some speculation that nobody knows if it's true or not, but people say they could see this giant walking there. And this giant called Buto Ijo also believed to be able to communicate to people if people want to, like if they give offerings and stuff like that. And most people probably, if they want to connect with spiritual beings like that, they want to get like fortune or wealth, things like that. So stories like this actually going around, and this is a common thing. People don't think it's a funny thing, or they look at you strangely if you talk about that. But it's a natural occurrence because you're surrounded by all these supernatural things every day,
right?
Until now, yeah. Even in Jakarta, the biggest city in Indonesia, you can still find a lot of services that offer supernatural services like shamanism or help you in your business or relationship or whatever it is. Yeah, this is just part of the life there, and the giant story is also engraved in the human psyches in Indonesia as well. By just looking at the stories, children's stories, etc., it's all there, all over. So it's the same like everywhere in the world.
Well, it just seems interesting if there was a 30-foot giant. I mean, that's like 3-story giant walking around, that somebody would notice him. I mean, yeah. I obviously haven't been to Indonesia. But hiding a 30-foot giant would be a lot more challenging than hiding a Bigfoot in a forest, I would think.
Yes, definitely. But my suspicion is probably this, that probably a couple of possibilities. The first one, it might be just a trick of the camera. The second, probably it's true, but probably this being is a spiritual being that has different frequency than us, and only certain people can see. So,
but would that be counted kind of as some kind of an extraterrestrial that might be interdimensional or something like that?
Yes, that's my suspicion. It's like I can't remember the name of the researcher about Bigfoot, but I remember he said that Bigfoot are actually multidimensional beings, so they can move between dimensions. So it is possible that the giants, or probably the Bigfoot in Indonesia, are categorized into those types. We never know.
I mean, that's one thing that I find very refreshing, hearing about cultures like in Indonesia, and I think in Australia to a certain extent, you can still find a lot of cultural information. I mean, in the United States, it's really been kind of wiped out, suppressed, overridden by Western thought. And, so it's nice to just find out that there are places where people are spiritual and it's okay to be spiritual, just in the general concept and idea of the word, and, and live a lifestyle that's not biblical, or Christian, or, not to knock people that are Christians, but, it kind of, it tries to invalidate anything that's not inside the book versus trying to be inclusive of everybody.
Yeah, I really understand what you mean, because I was there before, and I was in that situation before. I poo-poo all the stuff about all the spirituality when I was in a deep Christianity religion. But what I'd like to say to people now, we have to look beyond religions. I mean, I'm not against any religion. People are free to believe in whatever they like to believe, anything that resonates with themselves. But I'd like to give them suggestion. Let's go beyond religion. Let's go beyond that and look inside ourselves, our spirituality. That's the most important thing. There's a longing there inside all of us, a longing to find out who we are and to find out more than all this 5-sense reality and more than the 3D reality that we are currently in. And my message to people is, let's go explore that and beyond that. Like in Indonesia, people like myself, when I was there, we were conditioned to be religious. You ought to have a religion when you were in Indonesia when I was growing up. So there were Muslims, there were Christians, there were Hindus, there were Buddhists, and you have to choose one of them. I think this is just a longing of people inside them. Like until now, if you go to Indonesia, all the mosques are full, all the churches and the cathedrals are full, all the temples are full with people, because inside each one of us, there's a spiritual longing. And unfortunately, people are stuck in the religions. And let's go beyond that and let's explore spirituality, something more than the religion, finding ourselves and finding the meaning of our lives and finding all the realities that's beyond our 5 senses and 3D realities are actually something that's quite fascinating to explore and might even change your life forever.
I mean, I feel, I'm just going to put this out, I feel that organized religion, I mean, not all of them and not all the time, but tends to keep you blocked from exploring your inner world because they just want you to follow the path that they lay out. And I'm not going to say all the religions, but, that tends to be what ends up happening. They say, you have to pray so many times a day. And people they're not trained. They're not given the information of how to take that to the next level and how to penetrate yourself, even though they might go and, be devout, Christians or Jews or Muslims, but they never are taught how to take it within themselves. It always becomes this external kind of rote, I have to follow these rules kind of things, versus coming from the heart and the soul and our connection with God.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. This is, I think, just a complex of human being. It's called the external savior complex. There's always something external than us that can save us from what we are or where we are now. That's why I really have my respect towards the other spiritual side of these religions, like Sufism in Muslim, or the Kabbalah in the Judaism, or the Gnostic in the Christianity, and so forth, and the Buddhism, etc. Because they focus more into the spirituality and looking into within yourself, not externally outside yourself, and it's more into deep thinking, and I think that's what people need now. Really, people need to look into themselves more than just looking outside. Because if we keep looking outside, you'll never find anything. You will go round and round in circle, and you never find it. But if you look into yourself, look inside, probably you might find it.
Mm-hmm.
It's our journey, all of us.
So go to Indonesia. No. So in your book, one of the stories or one of the concepts that you go into, and you tell a couple of different stories, is about the Bat Woman. And so I'm kind of thinking you're not thinking like Batgirl and Batman and Robin, but something else. So who is the Bat Woman?
Yes, this is a very interesting story. The Batwoman, B-A-T, not B-A-D. Batwoman, yeah. This is a very interesting mythical or folklore figure still alive in Indonesia today. The fact is, this story is very close to my heart because I told the story about my mother's relatives, two of them, female relatives, that were abducted by this being. Yeah, this being called Batwoman, or in the local language, Kelongwewe, abducts children. Usually it abducts children in the dusk. I mean during the dusk, and if they see children around on its own and not cared by the parents or things like that, it will approach the children and take them away. And they portray this being, the Batwoman, as an old lady, an old woman with, pardon my language, long pendulous breasts. And this being will wrap the child with that breast and take him or her away from the parents. This is what happened to the relatives of my mother when she was about 3 or 4 years old. When she was little, she was just playing, wading the creek near the house at that time, in a village near Jakarta. Jakarta at that time was a quiet place. It's not like now, a big city, but it was a very quiet place in the 1950s. And she just disappeared, and nobody could find her. And she was like disappeared for 2 or 3 days, and no one could find her. They look everywhere, look everywhere. The parents were very upset. But later on, someone in the village told the parents that you should do this ritual and take the whole village and make some noise with the kitchen utensils and anything that you can find to make some noise, and call out to this being and call out to your child to be returned. So that's what they did. The parents did that. And after a while, after they did that ritual, they found the child just squatting under the tree. I mean, all this time, they've been looking everywhere, including that area, but they couldn't find her. But then, there she was, just squatting there. And she then confessed, that child confessed to the people that she followed this old lady, and that lady was very nice to her, and she gave her noodles, she gave her some food and some chili sauce, things like that. But in actuality, that noodles actually was worm, and the rice was soil. So that was quite disgusting. But anyway, that's what she said. And the thing is, I also question that's probably this being is not what people think. This being might be a type of aliens that might have been in the area, adjusting itself into the culture there, to show itself as an old lady with a pendulous breast like that. It's just a question that I have in my mind, and also probably is also a multidimensional being, a transdimensional being, because people couldn't see the being and the child even when they look everywhere, when all of a sudden it's there. So that's a big question. So this is quite fascinating. Although until now, the stories about children got abducted, getting not many you can hear these days, but it's still alive in the culture. And I also told a story about another my mother's relative, that has been abducted as well. But she wasn't a child when she was abducted. The thing is, what happened, the aftermath after they have been abducted, they become some kind of mentally disturbed, and it happens until now. Although they're now elderly, the remnants of it, the remnants of that experience, still there, and no one can explain about all this, what happened to them, because this is so baffling to people, and they can't see the creature. Only the child could see the creature, and until now, I still can hear my mother talking to me about the stories. Until now, that's why I still remember. That's why it's so close to my heart. That's why I put it in the book. So I thought people might be fascinated by them as well.
Well, they are. I mean, for a couple of different reasons. When you look at folklore that comes out of like England and France, that, Northern Europe area, you hear very similar stories about children being taken and sometimes come back, or they will take an infant and will leave like a log or like a wooden dummy of the infant there. And, you don't really realize that your baby's been taken until you try to get it to interact, and, it doesn't do anything. I mean, just very, it was I like looking at parallels, and that story just had a lot of parallels to what I was seeing in mythology. Well, actually, both in England and in Native American cultures. So, it's just yet another one of those little, parallels. But what I think is also interesting, and I'm going to kind of jump totally to a different area in the same thing, is just the whole concept of alien abduction and how you will hear stories of multiple family members being abducted, not necessarily at the same time, but that they will, that there can be this genetic connection. They're not really sure exactly what it is. So any comments about those two topics, diverse as they may be?
Well, I don't know what to say about that, because in my book I didn't put that chapter title as alien abduction, but I put it quote unquote alien abduction, because to me, okay, it is a different being, but I question it. It sounds like alien abduction. It sounds, there's a resemblance there, although there was no UFOs involved in there. But the similarities are quite staggering. And like what you said, it is quite interesting to probably to link that maybe there's some genetic. I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I mean, but
it's possible.
But I mean, worst case scenario, we are talking about, and this is just kind of food for thought, about beings, individuals that are not human. So whether they are extraterrestrial or some kind of life form that exists on the earth, in the three-dimensional world or in an interdimensional world, they're not human.
Yeah.
So it kind of puts them in that alien category.
Yeah. Well, I think what we know about this earth, about this universe, is so limited. I mean, just think about all this dark energy and dark matter that takes about 95% of our world, our universe, including our earth, including ourselves included. So what it's like looking at the TV screen and covering 95% of it with the black cloth, and we could only see 5% of it. So it's like that. So we never know what really is going on on the earth or under the earth or above the earth. There's so many other beings, or multidimensional beings, or whatever you call it. There's so many of them. That's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that you talk about in the book that kind of got, me going. All right. So hang on. is a creature called Tuyul. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Did I sort of
right.
say that right?
Yes, they're very good. To you.
Yay!
Yeah. You're very good.
And so, well, usually not, but you had it in the book kind of phonetic, so I'm like, hey, maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
But talk about that creature, because I think it really flows in really nicely after talking about this whole concept of the Batwoman.
Yes, this is another creature. Well, people who confess they have seen this creature, they said this creature looks like a baby, a newborn baby. And they said it looks like grayish color or green color with a skin like that, and the head is big. So, and with red big eyes, and this creature is about the size of a little child, and they believe this is a spiritual creature. The origin of this creature, they believe, comes from a died baby or unborn babies. So, but the spirit of this creature wandering around the earth, and if people can get to that spirit, they can make this spirit work for them, doing some terrible things like stealing money and stuff like that. That's what the people believe in Indonesia. And not only that, there's an article on this very prominent newspaper in Indonesia called Kompas newspaper in 2011, mentioning about people's experience catching this creature in a bottle. So they caught this creature and put it in a bottle, a tiny bottle, and they can see this creature, the figure, the head, the body, etc. And the shaman communicated with this creature, asking about the details about what it did and stuff like that. And the creature confessed to the shaman that he is owned by this such and such person in the area, and he's been doing this job for a while, stealing money from people and things like that. And so many people going to that house just to look at the bottle and to see the creatures. And for me, this creature sounds so much like aliens as well, like the typical gray aliens, or maybe goblins, because the characteristics that I mentioned before. It's small, like a baby, and big head, and grayish or green skin. So this is fascinating. You never know. It might be another type of alien as well, maybe a gray alien. You never know.
Well, and when we don't have, when we don't use the same vocabulary, and we're just trying to describe something that we see that we really don't know. I mean, we know a chair is a chair because someone pointed to a chair and said, that's a chair.
Yeah.
But there are things like I do a presentation talking about myth as history, and I have this thing of a horror. It's Indian, and it is the rod that Indira carries that shoots lightning. That's the mythology tied to it. Well, I'll put a picture of it up on the screen, and I'll ask people, what do you think it is? Or what do you think it's used for? And after people get past the kind of blank expression on their face because they have no clue, I'll get things from, a curtain rod or a rattle or just a number of different, because they've never seen this item before. And so if someone was seeing some kind of little gray or green alien thing walking around, I mean, yes. They would do their best to describe it in any way that they could. And so, I think it's definitely up to us now to kind of look at what that is and try to make sense of it.
Yes, definitely. It's just a matter of terminology, really. In the end, probably it is still the same thing or the same being, like what you said. Yeah. It's just a matter of terminology and how people call it.
So, I mean, does this thing do anything? Does it abduct anybody? Or
no, this Tuyul does some naughty little things like stealing money or just watching people doing things, and they can go into people's houses. And but sometimes they're very playful also. They can play with some children toys and things like that. And the funny thing is, in Indonesia, they make a lot of movies or TV shows about this tuyul being, and they're quite popular. This is so funny, actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
So kind of like Pokemon. Do you know what Pokemon is?
Yes, I know.
Interesting. Okay, so I didn't see it because I didn't, read your book cover to cover, but I'm just going to ask you, what about stories of like an underworld or underground cities or people going into a cave and finding, people living there or stuff associated with caves and things like that? Anything interesting?
Not exactly a cave, but in chapter 10, I wrote about the Queen of the Southern Ocean. This is basically a figure.
That's right. I remember reading that.
Yeah, this is very fascinating. It's a very fascinating power figure that actually this is the very well-known mythological creature in Indonesia. If you ask people from Indonesia, do you know Nyi Roro Kidul, the Queen of the Southern Ocean? They will say, yes, we do. Especially people from the Javanese and the Balinese culture, they will know about this figure, because this figure, she's like the queen who has dominion over the Southern Ocean of Java and Bali. And even some hotels in the area in Java and Bali, they reserve special rooms for her. No one can stay there. And that room is like a place for worship. It's like a shrine for her. And they put her clothes, everything else. And there's so many stories about this power figure and the connection of this Southern Ocean queen with the monarch, the current surviving monarch in Yogyakarta in Central Java is quite amazing, that I put in the book as well. And this the story about the hotel room is also fascinating, because there was a fire in the hotel in Bali, but the surviving room, the only room that survived that fire, is that very room where they dedicate that room for the Queen of the Southern Ocean. And no one can explain how could that happen. That's just a fascinating tidbit about it. But there's so many other tidbits about this. We don't have enough time for that. But basically, this Southern Ocean queen, this Queen of the Southern Ocean, they believe she lives right there under the ocean of Southern Ocean of Java. And there's some confessions of people who were drowned and came back to life. And they said, oh, we saw just a highway and we saw a palace down there. We saw a palace, a beautiful palace with her and the people like her army or servants there. And probably it's true. Probably I question in my book, speculate in my book that she might be a being that we never know. She might be a being that we never really have a name. Or maybe she might be a being from the inner earth, from the hollow earth. Because she divides her time between the ocean and the earth, especially her connection with the monarch or the sultan in the Yogyakarta area. So that's quite fascinating. Yeah, as I said, we don't have enough time because it's quite a long story. But that's basically in a nutshell.
Well, but that just is very congruent with stories that you hear in Sumerian culture, Native American culture, about these beings, either living in the caves or living under the water. I mean, in Native American stuff, they tend to talk about, the person that lives in the lake versus the ocean, but there's still this connection to water and people living underneath it, which is like, okay, because it's not something that I think we would think to have people do because we don't do it. So why would, so why would people come up with these stories? I mean, that's always where I'm going. Why would people come up with these stories if it's not something we would ever do?
Exactly. Probably for people out there, maybe they live on their own in an apartment or they live on their own in a house. hello, there might be some neighbors down there. You never know. Yeah. So it's quite fascinating.
So, of all of the things that you talk about in your book, what is kind of your favorite story that you share with people?
They're all quite nice in their own way. I talk about ghosts. I talk about this other being called quote unquote vampires. Basically, is a vampire version of Indonesia in Bali. This being likes to attack people and suck their blood. Also, the other stories delve into the ancient temples and ancient megalithic structures in Indonesia. Basically, it's like a compilation of so many stories. They're all interesting in their own ways, but this is not like an academic book. This is like an entertaining book with a message, with a deep questioning, with deep thinking. A bit of science there too, and a bit of spirituality in the end. I don't know. They're interesting to me. That's why I put them all in there. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Okay. Let's see. I had a lot of questions for you.
Wow.
Okay. So you talked about the pyramid structures in Indonesia. Are there other ones that people have not ever heard about?
What I talked about before, they're newly discovered just recently. Those ones in West Java, and the digging is still underway, and they're still doing all the research. So it's still underway. It's not finished yet, but people can go to realitysandwich.com and just type in the search or Google in the search pyramid, Garut pyramid. Garut spelled Garut. So just put that Garut pyramid and they will find the news about that. Or they can go to my website and they can see the news item there about that pyramid. That's the ones that I found recently in the news as well. But basically, there are other temples that people might not be familiar, like we know about Borobudur or Prambanan is quite internationally renowned, but there's so many other little temples around the area as well that people might be interested to find out. In terms of other ancient temples, I think they're yet to be found. At the moment, that's the one that we found in the city of Cianjur and Garut. Those two, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, is Indonesia in general, I mean, is there a lot of trees and forests, that would cover this kind of thing up? Or is there, just kind of grassland? I mean,
well, it's
I
a
don't
tropical
know. So
area.
Okay, but
it's a tropical area, yeah. So we never know. Sorry.
But, like I went to Hawaii and it wasn't as plant filled as I thought it would be. Now, I don't know if they basically came in with their bulldozer and bulldozed everything down so that they could, put the hotels in. But it wasn't, I thought it would just be kind of like tropical forest everywhere. And it kind of wasn't. So.
Well, it's a mixture of tropical forest, which is another concern that they're disappearing. In my part, I'm also concerned about the environment there. But on the other hand, probably when they clear the forest, they might find some interesting temples. You never know, because Indonesia is quite vast. It's as big as Mexico. So you never know what you find, because there's still a lot of forest areas, especially in the Sumatra Island and Borneo Island. There's still a lot of them yet to be found, I believe.
Well, I just think that it's great. Oh, I need to wrap up here. I just think that it's great that there is at least some interest happening in that area. I mean, I think a lot of people were of the impression that, there wasn't anything going on there. And I think it's great that they are finding stuff and they're finding, pieces of information that are important and will add to the puzzle. But with that said, we have like 1 minute left. And so give out the name of your book, where people can get it, your webpage, your radio show, if you want to say when that's going to be on and how people can tune into it.
Yeah, I'm just an amateurish radio show host at the moment. But anyway, people can go to my website, exoticfiles.net or faraustralia.com or faraustralia.net. Far Australia is spelled FAREASTRALIA. So it's like Far East and then RALIA.net or .com. And people can check my book or my radio show there, and they can look at the news, etc. Thank you.
Well, okay. Well, Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure. I had a good time too, Dr. Rita. You're so much fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're very welcome, and I will talk to you again soon, okay?
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay.
You're welcome. Bye, Andy. That's
Bye for
Andy.
now.
That's Andy McFareast. His webpage is www.faraustralia.com or www.exoticfiles.net. And we will be back with Josh Reeves after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.